I never thought one simple request from Emma would change the way I saw myself forever. It's strange to think back now because that day didn't start with anything unusual. I woke up in my small apartment, sunlight cutting through the thin curtains, and the usual hum of the city just beyond the window. I'm Daniel, 32 years old, a fairly quiet and private person who works as an assistant manager at a mid-sized accounting firm. My life, until recently, was all numbers, deadlines, and the occasional night out with Emma. We had been together for 3 years, comfortable in that rhythm of knowing each other's routines, each other's likes and dislikes. Emma had always been the more adventurous one. She worked as a freelance photographer and was constantly surrounded by vibrant, stylish people. Her world was color, creativity, and bold ideas, while mine was gray spreadsheets and predictable schedules. Maybe that's part of why I was drawn to her. She made everything feel less flat. The morning of all this, Emma had been in one of her playful moods. She'd been hired to shoot a themed engagement party that evening, and she was buzzing around our shared space, picking outfits from her wardrobe and laying them across the couch. I was sitting at the dining table with my coffee, half listening to her talk about lighting angles and vintage props. At one point she paused, looking at me with that mischievous smile she had when she was plotting something. "Daniel," she said slowly, "I have an idea. But you have to promise not to freak out." I laughed because whenever she said that, it usually meant something wildly out of my comfort zone, like joining her in a dance flash mob or pretending to be a tourist so she could photograph reactions. "All right," I said cautiously. "What is it?" She picked up a pale lavender dress from the couch. It was delicate, with soft folds and a shimmer in the fabric that caught the morning light. "I need someone to model this for a quick lighting test before the party. My original model canceled last minute, and you're the only one here." She tilted her head. "It's just for a few minutes. I won't even take full photos, just lighting checks." I almost choked on my coffee. "You want me to wear that?" "Yes," she said, as if it were the most natural request in the world. "It's just a dress, Daniel. No one's going to see you, except me." I felt a flicker of nervousness in my stomach. I'd never worn anything like that before. My clothes had always been simple button-up shirts, plain trousers, the occasional suit. The idea of slipping into something so different felt almost dangerous. "Emma, I don't think." "Come on," she interrupted, walking over and holding the dress up against me. "Just think of it as helping me out. You're always saying you want to support my work. Besides, you're about my size, it'll fit." Her tone was light, but there was something in her eyes, a mixture of challenge and curiosity. I could have said no. I could have laughed it off. But something in me hesitated. Maybe it was the way she framed it as a favor. Maybe it was a deeper, unspoken part of me that wanted to know what it would feel like. A minute later, I found myself standing awkwardly in the bedroom while Emma rummaged through a drawer. She tossed me a set of nude undergarments and told me to put them on first. "It'll make the dress fall better," she explained. I felt ridiculous holding them, my mind racing with excuses to back out, but I didn't move toward the door. When I finally changed, the first thing I noticed was how strange the fabric felt against my skin, soft, almost too light. It didn't cling the way my usual clothes did. I looked down and barely recognized myself in them. Then Emma came in with a lavender dress and helped me step into it. The fabric whispered as it slid up my legs, the cool touch sending a shiver up my spine. She zipped it up carefully, the sound loud in the quiet room. I caught my reflection in the mirror. My face was still mine, my hair still short and plain, but the shape of the dress changed my posture. I stood differently, shoulders drawn back, without thinking. I didn't know whether to laugh or hide. Emma grinned. "See? Not so bad." "It's weird," I admitted. But there was something else too, something I didn't say, a flicker of intrigue. She started adjusting the straps, smoothing the fabric over my torso, with a precision that felt almost intimate. "All right, stand here by the window. I just need to check the light." She stepped back, lifting her camera, and for the first few clicks I tried to act normal. But as she adjusted the angle and told me to tilt my chin, I noticed how the light caught the shimmer of the fabric, how the lavender softened the sharpness of my features. I'd never thought of myself as anything but ordinary. But in that moment, I wasn't just Daniel in a dress, I was someone else. Emma lowered the camera and studied me for a second. You know, you carry this look surprisingly well. I felt my cheeks warm. Don't start. I'm serious, she said, smiling in that way that made it hard to tell if she was teasing or not. It's like the dress changes you. Makes you softer, but in a good way. I didn't respond. I couldn't quite put into words the odd pull I felt, the mix of embarrassment and a strange kind of pride. After the lighting check, she asked me to keep it on for a bit while she tested different backdrops. I found myself relaxing into the role, even shifting my weight differently, letting the fabric sway when I moved. I told myself it was just for her photography, just to help. But later, when she left the room to grab another lens, I stood in front of the mirror again. The lavender shimmer caught the fading sunlight, and I tilted my head, studying the way the fabric draped. For a second, I imagined what it might be like to fully look the part, not just the dress, but makeup, hair, everything. The thought startled me. I shook it off, telling myself it didn't matter. But I knew it had lodged somewhere in the back of my mind, and it wasn't going away. I didn't realize it then, but this was the first crack in the version of myself I thought was fixed. And once that crack appeared, the rest of my life would start to shift in ways I never expected. That night, after Emma left for the engagement party, I found myself pacing the apartment. The lavender dress was neatly folded on the couch where she'd left it, but I kept glancing at it like it might move on its own. I told myself it was just curiosity, a harmless afterthought. Still, every time I passed the couch, my eyes lingered. I made dinner, tried to distract myself with a movie, but my mind kept going back to the way it had felt, how the fabric had swished against my legs, the way it had made me stand taller without realizing. By the time Emma came home, I'd convinced myself the feeling was just in my head. She was tired but smiling, her camera bag slung over her shoulder. The party went great, she said, kicking off her shoes. People love the photos. She glanced at the couch. You didn't try it on again, did you? She said it lightly, like a joke, but something in her tone made my chest tighten. No, I said quickly. Maybe too quickly. Over the next few days, life slipped back into routine, or so I thought. Work was the same endless numbers and polite small talk. Emma was busy editing photos and meeting clients. But that moment in the dress hovered at the edge of my thoughts like an unfinished sentence. One night, while Emma was out meeting a friend, I found myself standing in front of her wardrobe. It was ridiculous. I wasn't going to do anything. I was just looking. Her clothes were arranged by color, from pale creams to deep blues. My fingers brushed over the fabric's silk, cotton, lace. The textures alone were unlike anything in my own closet. I told myself I was just curious about how they felt. But my hand stopped on the lavender dress, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was slipping it off the hanger. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge. I changed quickly, my hands a little shaky, and when I turned toward the mirror, there I was again, not Daniel the assistant manager, not Emma's boyfriend, but someone softer, someone who carried themselves differently. This time I didn't stop at just looking. I opened her makeup drawer. I'd seen Emma do her makeup hundreds of times, but my hands fumbled clumsily with the brushes and powders. I wasn't aiming for perfection, just to see what it might do to my face. A little foundation, a hint of blush. When I stepped back, the change was subtle, but it was enough to make my heart race. I heard the click of the apartment door and froze. Daniel? Emma's voice floated in from the hall. I scrambled to grab a sweater from the bed and pull it over the dress. My hands were still on the hem when she walked in. She looked at me, eyebrows raised. Why are you wearing a sweater in here? It's warm. I was just cold, I stammered. She tilted her head, but didn't press. Well, I brought dinner. Come eat. The rest of the night passed without incident, but my heart didn't stop racing until long after she'd gone to bed. I promised myself I wouldn't do it again. That promise lasted exactly 4 days. It became a quiet routine, waiting until Emma had a meeting or was out for a shoot, then slipping into something from her wardrobe. Not always the lavender dress. Sometimes a cream blouse, sometimes a flowy skirt. Always with the same cautious thrill. I was careful to put everything back exactly as I'd found it, but the risk made it all the more intoxicating. And then one Friday afternoon, the risk almost became reality. Emma was supposed to be at a location shoot all day. I had the apartment to myself. I picked a navy dress this time, one that hugged my torso a bit more, and paired it with a pair of low heels she kept in the back of the closet. I was just adjusting the strap when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside the apartment door. My stomach dropped. The key turned in the lock. I barely had time to kick off the shoes and grab the nearest cardigan before Emma stepped inside. She looked flushed, annoyed. The shoot got canceled. The couple decided to reschedule. She dropped her bag by the door, then paused, her eyes flicking down at me. "Were you?" She trailed off, but the question hung in the air. I forced a laugh. "Just trying on your cardigan." Her gaze lingered a moment too long before she nodded slowly.
"Right."
"Well, I'm starving." "You?" We ate in near silence. I could feel the question she hadn't asked still hanging between us. That weekend, I caught her watching me more closely than usual. Her eyes would follow me for just a second too long when I walked into a room. Once, I noticed her looking at my hands while I was washing dishes, as if she were searching for something. And then, on Sunday evening, she said, "Daniel, I've been thinking." I looked up from my laptop. "About what?"
"About that dress."
"The lavender one. And how you looked in it." My pulse quickened.
"Emma."
"Don't get defensive," she said, holding up her hands. "I'm just saying you look different. Not in a bad way. I mean, you looked comfortable. Confident even. More than I usually see you at work or around people." I swallowed hard. "It was just for your lighting test." "Was it?" she asked softly. I didn't answer. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. What if we explored that a little? The idea hit me like a sudden gust of wind, equal parts thrilling and terrifying. "Explore?" "You helped me with a project I've been thinking about," she said. "A photo series on identity. We could play with different looks, styles, see where it goes." She smiled faintly. "No pressure. Just something between us." I wanted to say no. I wanted to close that door before it swung any wider. But deep down, I knew the door had already opened the moment I first stepped into that lavender dress. And saying yes was easier than I expected. The week that followed became a whirlwind. Emma and I spent evenings experimenting with clothes, hairstyles, and subtle makeup. At first, it was playful, just me standing in front of her camera while she adjusted the light and told me how to tilt my chin. But each session drew me further into a side of myself I had never acknowledged before. It wasn't just about the dress or the makeup. It was about how I felt wearing them. My posture, my confidence, even the way I spoke when she asked me questions. I was learning how to move in a world that wasn't entirely mine, yet felt right in ways I couldn't explain. But the thrill of secrecy carried its own tension. Every time the door clicked or a neighbor's voice echoed in the hall, my pulse spiked. I became hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow. I'd start in my outfit, lost in the reflection of the mirror, only to snap out of it when I realized I could be caught at any moment. The adrenaline was addictive. One evening, Emma suggested something bolder. "Daniel, I want you to try a public test. Just a short walk down the street. No one you know will see you, I promise. I just want to capture some natural light for the series." My stomach sank. The idea of leaving the apartment dressed like this was terrifying. "Emma, I can't. People will see me." "Trust me," she said, giving me a look that made it hard to refuse. "You're ready, and I'll be with you. It's just a block or two." I took a deep breath, my palms clammy. I'd practiced enough at home to feel confident in the clothes themselves, but stepping outside made it real. Navy dress, low heels, a light layer of makeup. My reflection in the hallway mirror stared back at me, someone unfamiliar but undeniably me. We walked together, Emma holding her camera at the ready. The first few steps were agonizing. Every passerby felt like a judge, every glance a threat. But then, something strange happened.
People didn't react.
They walked past, immersed in their own worlds. And with each step, I felt a little lighter, a little more myself. Emma whispered, "See? You're doing fine." The adrenaline still coursed through me, but for the first time, it wasn't fear alone, it was excitement, a surge of freedom I hadn't anticipated. The streets blurred into a quiet rhythm as I began to move naturally, swaying slightly with the dress, my shoulders back, my chin lifted. We returned to the apartment, hearts racing. "You did amazing," Emma said, placing a hand on my arm. Her fingers were warm, grounding me in the moment. "I knew you could do it." But the calm was short-lived. Later that night, a knock echoed through the apartment. My heart leapt. I wasn't expecting anyone. Emma had stepped out for a quick errand, leaving me in my outfit. I froze, staring at the door. "Daniel? You here?" The voice was familiar, my neighbor from across the hall, someone I barely knew but had chatted with in passing. Panic surged. I darted to the bedroom, yanking the dress over my head and tossing it onto the bed. My hands trembled as I grabbed sweatpants and a t-shirt. The knock came again, more insistent. "Hey, Daniel. Are you okay?" I heard a noise. I opened the door just a crack, heart hammering. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, voice higher than usual, shaky. "Good," they said, moving on. Relief washed over me, but I knew that close call had changed something. The risk was no longer theoretical, it was real, and I'd felt the thrill of being exposed. That week became a turning point. I couldn't stop thinking about the dress, the heels, the way my reflection felt different yet more truthful. I experimented more boldly, longer sessions in front of the camera, pushing the boundaries of comfort. Emma guided me, but I started taking initiative, choosing colors, experimenting with makeup techniques she hadn't suggested. One evening, I was alone in the apartment, fully dressed, practicing a pose in front of the mirror, when I realized I wasn't thinking about fear. I wasn't thinking about being caught, or what others might think. I was thinking about how I felt confident, creative, alive in a way I'd never been in my normal life. But with the thrill came tension. Emma's increasing involvement in her project meant that people might see the photos. I was still cautious about who knew, still worried about judgment. And then came the day of the office party. My colleagues would be there, and Emma wanted a before and after concept for the series. She asked if I could help with a small demonstration at the party. I froze. "Emma, my coworkers. You'll just step in for a minute. Nobody will expect it. Trust me." Her eyes were firm. "You've come so far. You can do this." The night arrived, and I dressed in a new outfit. Emma had chosen a soft emerald green dress that hugged my torso and flared slightly at the skirt. My hair was styled differently, slightly longer, brushed out to soften my features. Makeup was subtle, enhancing rather than hiding. I looked at myself in the mirror and hardly recognized the person staring back. Confidence surged, but so did nerves. Arriving at the venue, my heart pounded. People milled around, chatting and laughing. Emma nudged me forward. "Just a moment, Daniel. Just one moment." I stepped toward the small stage area, the spotlight catching the shimmer of the dress. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some faces showed curiosity, others amusement, but none were judgmental. I held my breath, posing as Emma clicked photos, feeling exposed yet exhilarated. And then, halfway through, I saw someone in the back, one of my more conservative colleagues. My stomach dropped. The blood rushed from my head as I realized the possibility of being discovered in this vulnerable state. Emma caught my eye and whispered, "Stay still. You're doing great." The seconds stretched, each heartbeat louder than the last. I tried to move naturally, but every instinct screamed to run. And yet, as I looked at the mirror behind the stage reflecting my image, I didn't feel shame. I felt whole. When the photo shoot ended, applause broke out. Emma beamed at me.
"See?
Nothing to fear." But the adrenaline didn't fade. That night, alone in the apartment, I reflected on everything: the dresses, the makeup, the walks outside, the office party. The thrill, the fear, the excitement, the self-discovery. I realized I had crossed a threshold. I wasn't just trying on someone else's persona. I was uncovering a part of myself I had buried, a side that was authentic and vibrant. The problem was, this revelation couldn't stay contained forever. Someone might find out. I might slip in the wrong moment. And Emma, she knew, encouraged, and pushed me further than I'd ever gone. The tension of secrecy and the exhilaration of being myself created a storm inside me that I couldn't calm. The days after the office party were quiet, but my mind was anything but. I kept replaying the moment I saw my colleague in the crowd, the way my heart had slammed against my ribs, the mix of fear and exhilaration that coursed through me as I stood on that small stage. Alone in the apartment, I dressed in Emma's clothes again, feeling the soft fabric against my skin, the faint weight of heels reminding me of that evening. I realized then that this wasn't just about helping her photography anymore, it was about me, about discovering a version of myself I had never acknowledged. Emma noticed the change too. She smiled more often, touched my arm when I passed, and sometimes caught me staring into the mirror for longer than seemed reasonable. One evening, while she was setting up lights for a new shoot, she said, "Daniel, do you ever think about what this all means? Not just the photos, but you." I hesitated, unsure how to articulate feelings that were still raw, new, and terrifyingly exciting. I don't know, I admitted. I feel like I'm discovering something I didn't know was there. Something real. Her eyes softened. That's all I ever wanted you to feel. Not just for the camera, not for the dress, but for you. Whoever you choose to be. I felt my chest tighten. Those words were comforting, yet they carried an unspoken truth. My life was about to change, whether I was ready or not. A week later, Emma invited me to a private gallery showing for her series. The room was dim, lights highlighting framed portraits on the walls. I felt a familiar flutter in my stomach, the mix of excitement and fear I had learned to recognize. Emma guided me through the crowd, each photograph capturing a different version of me in her clothes, some subtle, some bold, all unmistakably me. People whispered, admired, and nodded appreciatively, yet none looked judgmental. As I lingered near a mirror on the wall, adjusting the hem of a soft pink dress, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see my neighbor from across the hall, the one who had almost caught me weeks before. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes lingered on me for longer than necessary. "You're different," he said carefully. "I didn't expect well. You look confident." I forced a small smile, unsure how much to reveal. "Thank you," I murmured, trying to steady my racing heart. Later that night, alone in the apartment, I removed the dress and sat on the edge of the bed. The reflection in the mirror showed Daniel the person I had always been and someone else, someone fragile yet powerful, someone I had only begun to understand. The thrill, the fear, the discovery, the secrecy, all of it had led me here. I realized that being caught wasn't the point anymore. The point was that I had found a part of myself I couldn't ignore. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from Emma. "Check your email." Something came in. I opened it to find a message from the gallery curator. The photos from the series were being considered for publication. They wanted to feature one of my images, just one, but it meant exposure beyond what I had ever imagined. My heart skipped a beat. The excitement was immediate, but so was the fear. People would see me. The world would see me. Would they judge me? Accept me? Or would this secret life I had cherished become a public story I wasn't ready to share? I stared at the screen, torn between the thrill of recognition and the terror of exposure. Emma's voice floated from the kitchen, calling for me to come and see something she had just framed. I looked at the dress folded neatly on the chair, the heels waiting beside it, and I felt the pull again. The choice was mine: stay hidden, safe in my private world, or step fully into this new identity with all the risks and rewards it carried. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard to reply to the curator. And just as I was about to hit send, the apartment door clicked. I froze. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. Emma hadn't come back yet. My pulse hammered in my ears as I realized I wasn't alone. The shadow appeared in the hallway, blocking the soft light from the door. And in that instant, I understood that nothing would ever be the same. The email, the gallery, the dresses, the secret life, it was all teetering on the edge of revelation. I wanted to speak, to ask who it was, but no words came. The figure stepped closer. My heart raced faster than ever before, caught between fear excitement, and the undeniable truth I had discovered inside the dress. And then the screen of my phone blinked again, a message from Emma. Whatever happens, remember who you are. I swallowed hard, realizing that whoever or whatever stood at the door might change everything. But for the first time, I wasn't just Daniel the assistant manager. I was Daniel the person who had found himself inside a dress, and I wasn't ready to hide anymore. The knock came again, louder this time. And the story stops here. Who is at the door? Will my secret be revealed? Will I step fully into this version of myself, or retreat back to safety? You decide. Comment below what you think happens next, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this story.